more this season goes on, the more I realize my enjoyment of the season hinges so strongly on how they resolve this one plot point. Hey there, I'm Torisaur, and today we're talking about Season 6, Episode 22 of Miraculous Ladybug, Lady Chaos. Before we get into it, I do know this episode technically comes after Heart Fixer, but not only is that episode releasing later, but the English dub specifically doesn't come out for about a month, so I ask that y'all please don't comment anything related to that episode, even though based on its trailer, it does seem like there are some things in that episode that will thematically kind of tie into the main plot of Lady Chaos. But with that, spoiler warning for Miraculous Season 6, Episode 22, Lady Chaos, let's get into it. Lady Chaos follows Adrien making a documentary about his father in an attempt to better understand how he could have been the hero of Paris when he was such an awful person. Meanwhile, Marinette is fighting for her life, trying to get everyone that Adrien interviews to focus on the good in Gabriel, even though they all know what a piece of shit he was. And y'all, this episode was kind of painful to watch, but I do think that was the point. Something I've touched on with previous episodes this season that have addressed the monarch identity issue, like El Toro de Piedra and Revelator, is this season is setting it up as the main story arc that will be resolved this season. Marinette is pretty consistently painted in the wrong, and Lady Chaos is the episode that has most specifically focused on that fact by illustrating the extent of Marinette's web of lies. And seeing to what extent that issue is showcased here has made me more confident that the season will end with the truth coming to light and the resulting fallout from it. Lady Chaos opens with Adrien in therapy, talking about his struggles to see his father as the hero of Paris when he was such an awful person. Dr. Pasica tells Adrien to think of his father like a puzzle where he's missing pieces that are preventing Adrien from fully understanding him. Adrien takes this as the missing pieces being the good parts of his father that others knew, which leads him to create this documentary highlighting his good. However, we as the audience obviously know that the piece missing from the Gabriel Agreste puzzle is that he was actually monarch. So pretty immediately we're confronted with Adrien's struggle and knowing that no matter what he does, even if he believes he's figured his father out, it's like he got the pieces from a different puzzle. And the person giving him those false pieces is none other than Marinette. There are 4 people that Adrien, Nino, and Marinette interview: Nathalie, Tomoe, Amelie, and Ladybug. Each of these interviews reveals a different perspective on the problem with Marinette prioritizing this lie over letting Adrien heal properly by learning the truth. As much as Nathalie is an icon for the way she stood up to Gabriel's bullshit in Season 5 and has become like a mother to Adrien, adopting the role of being his guardian in Season 6, she has been the #1 influence on Marinette maintaining the secret of Monarch's identity. In El Toro de Piedra, when Marinette finds the letter Gabriel wrote to Adrien explaining that he was Monarch, she goes to Nathalie, who immediately tries to tear the letter up. Marinette questions if they should make that decision for him, and although this conversation is interrupted before we see Nathalie's response, we do see her reaction in Mr. Agreste. Marinette sees how much Adrien is hurting in his struggle to see his father as a hero and runs to Nathalie, saying they need to tell him the truth. Nathalie asks if Marinette is out of her mind and if she wants Adrien to
figure out that I was Monarch's accomplice. We have determined a truth. We're sticking to it. You need to grin and bear it, Marinette. It's too late to go back.
Nathalie is unfortunately more interested in protecting herself than letting Adrien learn the truth that he is quite frankly owed. And this is likely due to her still being involved with the kingdom with her own set of daddy issues to contend with.
Once you've found Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous, you know who you must give them to.
Yes, Father.
But honestly, whatever Nathalie's secret reasoning or motivations may be, she is pushing Marinette in the wrong direction by continually convincing her that they need to keep Monarch's identity secret from Adrien. And Lady Chaos is just another example of this. At the point in the season that Marinette goes to Nathalie in this episode, she is also fully committed to the narrative that Nathalie wants her to stick to, which is why Marinette goes on a whole rant explaining the plot of Season 5 and why Nathalie can't tell Adrien the truth, because it will very clearly lay out how awful Gabriel Agreste truly was.
What are you gonna do? He was a horrible person! You can't tell him the truth.
Marinette emphasizing that he was a horrible person, immediately followed by her saying you can't tell him the truth, really highlights how much she's lost the plot. To her, protecting the secret of an objectively terrible person is more important than letting Adrien see that truth, because she doesn't want him to feel worse about having an awful father, even though Adrien is still clearly fighting demons, trying to grapple with the conflicting image of his shitty father being a hero. Marinette's rant also specifically acknowledges how, without realizing it, she's prioritizing piece of shit Gabriel Gabriel over the supposed love of her life, Adrien.
Be a dear and make sure that he never finds out that I was the big baddie, and that he only remembers me as the best great dad ever.
There are a lot of things I hate about the end of season 5, Marinette choosing to lie about Monarch's identity being one of them. However, I appreciate how it seems like they're setting up Marinette choosing this lie as a huge mistake from which she will learn her lesson at the end of the season. At least that's the direction they should take. I don't exactly trust this show to make the right narrative choice after the absolute clusterfuck that was season 5. In any case, Marinette relaying her reasoning behind hiding the truth from Adrien and absolutely crashing the fuck out about it shows us that although she's committed to maintaining this story, she is by no means happy about it. In the interview itself, Nathalie focuses on the fact that everything Gabriel did was out of love, even if it meant abandoning Adrien for extended periods of time while Amelie was dying.
One thing is for sure. He was ready to do anything out of love.
I will expand upon this a bit more when we get to Ladybug's interview, but this idea of excusing Gabriel's shitty behavior because he did it out of love is setting up a parallel to Marinette being blinded by love in the same way. And this blindness is what makes her an accomplice to Monarch, which we see in Tomoe's interview. I didn't initially intend calling out Marinette being blind as a segue into talking about Tomoe, who's blind, but I actually think it's a really interesting thing to call out because while Tomoe is blind, we know that she secretly has robotic eyes that were revealed to us in Yaxi Gozen. Whether these are just cosmetic or she can actually see through them, I think it's an interesting insight into the way Tomoe has more to her, and she isn't the true blind one, Marinette is. Marinette knows Tomoe was working with Gabriel, and Ladybug lying about Monarch's identity in turn protects her as well. Ladybug tells her, "I only hid the truth about Gabriel Agreste so that your daughter Kagami wouldn't grow up with an incarcerated mother," and that's all Marinette sees. However, we know that Tomoe is still trying to get the miraculous, working with the new butterfly holder and being a part of the kingdom. On top of this, while Marinette's identity as Ladybug is seemingly secret to Mrs. Tsurugi, we also know that she knows Lila suspects that identity and is trying to unmask her. When Ladybug goes to warn Tomoe that Adrien and his friends are going to come interview her, she asks,
"And how do you, Ladybug, know this?"
We might see some things happen in unreleased episodes prior to this, where Lila either confirms her suspicions or Tomoe starts agreeing with those suspicions more, who knows. Regardless, Tomoe at least has the idea of Marinette being Ladybug planted in her head, and this questioning of how Ladybug is privy to that information is indicative of that. Outside of Tomoe Tsurugi having more knowledge than Ladybug making this interaction really interesting, she specifically calls out that Ladybug is an accomplice to Monarch just as she was.
If you tell him that Gabriel was Monarch, Adrien will figure out that you were his accomplice.
You're an accomplice too.
Ladybug argues that she isn't an accomplice because she lied for Kagami's sake, but her reasoning doesn't change the fact that she is an accomplice, just as Monarch isn't any less of a terrorist because he did it out of love. In general, this scene just puts a huge pit in my stomach because it's the hero of Paris secretly going to one of the people responsible for terrorizing Paris and conspiring with her to hide her involvement and Monarch's true identity. That's objectively not heroic. It's a cowardly act that Marinette has convinced herself was the right choice because she did it for Adrien and Kagami's sakes. Of course, Marinette is still a kid and is committed to this decision because of the wishes of the adults in her life that share this knowledge. So I still have empathy for her, but the scene so clearly illustrates the way that she's committing to this lie is turning her into a villain. And Ladybug becoming more like a villain is made even more clear in her interview. Marinette asks Alia to create an illusion of Ladybug to do the interview since she needs to stay there as Marinette in order to protect her secret identity. Alia is completely against this, not wanting to lie on Marinette's behalf, but eventually very reluctantly agrees. This scene was also a very painful watch because we know how Alia reacted in Revelator when she learned Marinette was hiding Monarch's identity.
I thought we were no longer keeping secrets from each other.
For Marinette to say Gabriel being a hero was a total surprise to us all and convince Alia to support that narrative, knowing that she would actively be pissed at Marinette if she knew the truth, is so icky. And again, I think that's entirely the point. They want us to see just how awful it is that Marinette is dragging everyone around her into this lie, completely losing her sense of right and wrong. But the biggest thing that highlights the way Marinette is becoming the villain is the parallel it draws between her and Gabriel. We know the primary reason Marinette has committed to the lie of Gabriel Agreste being a hero is because she wants to protect Adrien because she loves him and wants him to be happy. And when the illusion of Ladybug is explaining the good of Gabriel Agreste, she says this.
Everything he did to protect you. He said, that he loved you.
Marinette is using the same shitty excuse of everything she's doing being out of love to push her own agenda, as opposed to letting Adrien learn the truth and properly heal from it. Gabriel thought controlling Adrien and locking him away was okay because he did it out of love, and Marinette is convincing herself that hiding the truth is perfectly okay for that same reason. There are two major differences between Marinette and Gabriel, the first of which being their ages. Like I mentioned earlier, Marinette is still a child, and the adults in her life are steering her in this direction of manipulation, so I obviously give her much more grace and by no means believe she is a bad person in the same way that Gabriel Agreste is. This is also due to the second big difference, that being Marinette's abundant guilt, and that she doesn't fully believe in her choice to maintain this lie.
I'm not sure I did the right thing, but sometimes you're willing to do anything for the people you love.
In Nathalie's interview, Marinette starts off quiet and contemplative, studying Adrien's reactions. However, the more interviews that pass, the more she acts absolutely unhinged, plastering on this fake, over-the-top smile, singing Gabriel Agreste's praises. Marinette is putting on this act to convince herself just as much as Adrien, because internally she knows what she's doing is wrong but has forced herself to accept it as right. This is also highlighted in the way Marinette keeps trying to stop the documentary and minimize the number of interviews. Because she knows to maintain this facade, she has to commit to more lying and manipulation. When Ladybug thanks Rena Rouge for help, she clarifies,
"The lying to Adrien thing wasn't cool in my book. Promise you'll never make me do that again."
and instead of promising, Ladybug says,
I'm really sorry, Alia, about everything.
Marinette's refusal to promise reflects the way that she is so committed to this lie that she can't promise that she won't ask Alia for help again. And the apology is the acknowledgement of the guilt she feels for this ask, as well as everything else she's done to commit to her choice of keeping this secret. And the immorality of this choice is best highlighted through Amelie. When Marinette first approaches Amelie asking her to show Adrien the good in his father, she outright refuses, saying,
"Just because you lie doesn't mean the truth ceases to exist."
Amelie immediately calls out exactly why Marinette keeping the secret is wrong, because it doesn't change any of the hurt that Gabriel caused Adrien both as his father and as monarch. Even when Amelie caves and agrees to the interview, she cannot bring herself to commit to the act because of how genuinely awful Gabriel was.
You mean like the fact that he was incredibly harsh?
On himself?
The contrast in Amelie calling out Gabriel being a bad person and Marinette trying to spin it in a positive light is the perfect representation of Marinette's internal conflict. She knows Amelie is right, but is committed so strongly to this lie that she has to aggressively push this super positive image of Gabriel Agreste. Amelie eventually gives up, saying,
Yes, right. What Marinette says.
which reflects how Marinette's version of the truth has dominated in such an extreme way that even Gabriel's biggest hater has gone along with it. Amelie's akumatization as Lady Chaos pushes the narrative that Marinette is in the wrong even further, as during her akumatization she says,
I'm so tired of this cruel, unfair world where lying and selfishness are rewarded, where villains pass for heroes.
This sentiment is exactly how I feel about Marinette keeping Gabriel's identity secret, and this akumatization makes me just a little more confident that Marinette will soon face the consequences of her actions. Lady Chaos's power and the way she's defeated is actually very similar to Lies from season 4, where the heroes can't get close to her without being affected by her power. This of course thematically ties into the episode being about Marinette lying, doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on that lie. After Lady Chaos is defeated, both Amelie and Rena Rouge condemn liars, and we see the intense guilt scrawled all over Ladybug's face.
It can be so hard to put up with evil people or liars.
Especially liars, am I right?
Yes, well,
And when Ladybug gives Amelie the charm, she tells her,
we absolutely need people like you who stick to their principles.
the sincerity with which Ladybug speaks here reads to me as Marinette wanting to see others stick to those principles of truth because she feels she can't herself. Again, this entire episode is Marinette convincing herself that she needs to maintain this lie when she knows deep down that it is wrong. Which is why at the end of the episode, she just sounds tired, being very agreeable with Adrien when her plan to make him feel better has technically worked exactly how she wanted it to.
For the first time, I feel like I actually know my father.
I feel exactly the same as you, of course.
The way Marinette specifically says,
I'm glad this is over. I'm glad you have closure.
reflects the way her need to put an end to Adrien questioning his father has subconsciously become more of a priority than Adrien actually finding closure, since the only way Adrien can actually find that closure is by learning the truth. The last we see of Marinette in this episode is her staring at a blank sheet of paper, struggling to draw the illusion of a good man she created throughout the episode. Her face says it all. She's done something horrible, and although she did it so she and Adrien can live out their love story, it's very clearly just driving an even greater wedge between them. Like I mentioned earlier, although I really don't like the choice of Marinette lying to Adrien, they've made it pretty clear that she's meant to be in the wrong for that, and this episode especially has convinced me that she will face consequences for that choice by the end of the season. The scene with Felix and Amelie at the very end, when Amelie says,
"The truth always comes out. Your cousin will need his family's support,"
seems to be alluding to the way that there will be a massive fallout when Monarch's identity is revealed. Whether that be between Ladybug and Cat Noir, Marinette and Adrien, or any of the other many people she's lied to, I am more confident that Marinette will no longer be able to keep up this act and it will lead to devastating consequences. Though it is a little weird to me that Amelie is telling Felix of all people that he needs to be there for Adrien when Felix is actively participating in this charade, but whatever. Overall, despite my dislike of the choice to conceal Monarch's identity, I do think the way they're handling that choice is being done very well, and Lady Chaos is a great example of how. This episode was very focused on its one narrative of the Gabriel Agreste documentary, so the only other thoughts I have on this episode are the Akumatization itself. I think Lady Chaos looks pretty cool and has a neat power. Having the villain surrounded by a bubble like this is a really cool concept, and I think Lady Chaos made it way more interesting than Lies. One of my gripes with post-season 4 is the way the akumatized villains are defeated pretty immediately, and a lot less of the episode's runtimes are dedicated to it. However, in Lady Chaos, we see Carapace investigating the villain while protected with his shelter before the Miraculars regroup and execute the plan to defeat her. Seeing Cat Noir get corrupted and almost using his cataclysm to destroy everything was really cool, very Cat Blanc. In general, I think the akumatization sequence very much felt like a classic akumatization, and the way the powers were combined to defeat her was a lot of fun as well. But that's about all I have to say about Lady Chaos. Overall, I do have very mixed feelings about it, because it was a very frustrating episode to watch with Marinette being so harmfully committed to keeping Monarch's identity secret, but that was arguably the point of the episode. Really, my opinion on this episode hinges on how this arc is resolved. If it goes the way I'm hoping and we see the truth come to light, resulting in a fallout between Ladybug and whoever learns that truth, I think this episode did a fantastic job showcasing the way Marinette has lost the plot, and her choice to keep the secret is going to do more harm in the long run. However, if they choose to wrap up this narrative by kind of sweeping it under the rug, or framing the lie like it wasn't that big of a deal when it comes to light, I think Lady Chaos will become one of my least favorite episodes, because Marinette's frustrating behavior here will have retroactively been framed as unproblematic. I'm really hoping that isn't the case, and the more episodes that come out addressing this issue, the more confident I am that they won't make that mistake. But this is Miraculous, and after season 5, my general confidence in its writing has decreased significantly. Let me know what y'all thought of Lady Chaos and how you think it's going to tie into the rest of season 6. My next Miraculous video will be a character analysis of Chloe Bourgeois, breaking down how she and her potential redemption were mishandled, so make sure to subscribe so you can catch that video when it drops sometime next month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and hype if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time.